Thank you for making holiday card making class. I'm really excited to go through the project with you. I've also got tons of other inspiration. We're going to be talking about different products, technique ideas, all in the hopes that it is inspiring to you to go out and make your own holiday cards or tags. I know that we're going to be focusing on cards today, but I know some people might not be doing holiday cards. You might be doing gift tags for your presents, or just tagging, creating like little gift card holders for things. So we definitely have a little bit of something for everyone. But we are going to be going through this project in particular, I should say. We're going to be making this card today, this little dimensional tree card. I personally love like really alternative color ways for the holidays. I'm a little bit of a rebel that way, but anything I use today really and truly can be customized to the colors that you might prefer for whatever your kind of theme might be for the year. So even though I'm doing a tree, maybe you're into snowman, or maybe you like gingerbread cookies. You can really change out the concept itself to anything else you want. And I'm obviously talking right now because I'm waiting for people to jump on and join, because this is really kind of a make along today, or a watch along, and then you can make later. I will be going through all the products. But because of the way I have to film this, I'm not going to be able to see your comments when I switch to the overhead camera. And so what we have decided to do, because I can't answer them directly, is we have wonderful people from our social team and our creative team who will be in the comments with you. So if you have questions about any of the products, if you're not sure about a step, they will be able to sit there and answer those questions for you. And then I will go back after the fact and I will make sure that everyone's questions are answered. And if you are unsure of any step, I will be sure that you are clear on it. So don't worry if you don't hear me replying back. It's simply because I physically can't see it in the overhead camera. So that's the only reason why. But I'm really excited to share my love of card making, but also my love of holiday cheer. There's nothing better than receiving a card from a family friend or from family or friends at the holidays. I actually keep all of my cards that my best friends send to me, my family sends to me. It's in a little memory box in my room. But I think it's just really special to, especially my friends with their kids. Like if you wanted to, you could do something like this and you can just pop a picture on. It's really totally versatile. And that's what I love about card making. There is no wrong or right way to do it. It is maker's choice. So I think we should just get right into it. Stick around even after the tutorial and like kind of what we go through. I've kind of geared it towards simply because when you are having to do things in mass quantities, I want you to make it easy. I'll explain more of that in detail as we actually get making, but I also have examples of like more complicated projects, because let's say maybe you're someone who doesn't need to make 50 cards, maybe you're just making 5 and you want to do something a little bit more decorative or in depth. So I've got some sample ideas for that as well. But yeah, I'm going to switch my camera real quick and we're going to get right into the making. First thing I'm going to do is, if you are making along, hopefully you saw on our socials what you kind of needed to gather. I'm going to go through what I'm going to be working with first, so to give you a little bit of time to gather those supplies if you forgot anything, and then we'll just get right into making. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, I think we are all situated now. So because I'm going to be making a very specific card, I'm going to go through the colors that I've selected for that particular card and the dies that I'm using and all the good stuff that I have off to the side. I realize that is for another sample I'm going to show you, so you don't need that particular distress color. One thing I do want to point out is any of the colors I'm using, you can switch out. You don't feel obligated. That's why we said select your favorite festive colors and gave you the die set so you kind of would know what you're working with. I Don't want you to feel pressure as we're going through this. The whole point of a workshop and a class is just to have fun, and we're gonna have fun. So I'm just gonna kind of go through everything that you're gonna need, and I'm gonna start with the papers and stuff. I just wanted to get my gold luster wax there. So we're gonna start with the card base. So when you're making multiple cards, it's just easier to do it when you have a card pack. And luckily for you, Sizzix carries cards and envelope sets. We have a whole festive range of colors, and I am personally using the Pink Fizz one for the card base today. Like I said, I like alternative colors. But we have 5 total, and I'm going to show you the different packs, and I think I even have most of them off to the side here out of the pack so you can see what the colors are like. So they come 10 envelopes and cards in a pack, and you can find them on our websites, sizzix.com and sizzix.co.uk. They are acid and linen free. They have a nice smooth finish. They are really great cardstock weight. The actual envelope cards themselves are really heavy and durable, so that's why I like to use them. So this one right here is peppermint, so it's a nice light aqua color. I don't know if it really translates on camera, but it's much lighter in person than it appears to be on the camera right now. So that's one of them. And then this one I don't have out of the packaging, but this one is like a nice kind of foresty green, but this one's called Fir Tree, and it's a nice dark, very traditional kind of color for Christmas cards. Then we've got this one called Holly Berry. And Holly Berry is definitely more of a traditional like red color, very bright and poppy, a little bit of a crimson undertone, if you will, but great for Christmas cards or anything you want to do if you just like more fun, cutesy cards. And then the last one is Mistletoe Green. And now Mistletoe Green is a very, very vibrant green. I feel like this actually works really well with neutral colors instead of like bright, cheery colors, so to speak. But I think like blues and other greens and browns and creams would look really beautiful on top of this one. So great options for that. There are other cards and envelopes available in different colors like Arctic Sky, which I have right here because I'm going to use that in another make that I'm going to show you. So there are a lot of different options out there as far as the cards and envelopes, but with 10 in a pack, you can get a couple packs and get all your Christmas cards ready to go and just build out your card bases without having to make your card bases and find your envelopes. It all comes nice and easy peasy together. So that's what I'm using for the envelope. For the cardstock, I have kind of got a selection here of a few different ones. So these top 3 colors that I'm using, and then there's also white, which I have here off to the side because I already cut it down. I got all 4 of these from our festive cardstock pack, which looks a little bit like this. So you get some really nice red tones, green tones, pink, all of that. So you can use any cardstock that you have, but that's where I pulled mine from. And then I've also pulled in the gold opulent cardstock because I wanted to add a little bling. And our gold opulent cardstock comes in 5 different textures. So depending, if you don't like the glitter effect, maybe you'll like the matte or the brushed metal or the mirror. So that's what I've pulled in to have a little bling on my card. But like I said, use whatever you have handy, and then you can always finish and customize it however you want. As far as the dies and embossing folders I'm using, we are going to be using the Christmas tree pattern. This is probably one of my favorite embossing folders that we've come out with. It's really nice because it has a lot of different dimension. I'm going to pull this up as close as I can so you can see there's a bunch of different trees. They have lots of little details on it. You're only going to see a small slice of it in the card, but I think it adds just the perfect little border to the Christmas tree. So we're going to be using that. This is the folder itself, already out of the packaging. And then as far as the die set goes, I wanted to give you something that had traditional shapes in it, but also would be easy to use for mass producing. So this one is called Basic Christmas Shapes, and as you can see, it comes with all the dies you're going to need, and this is 665336. Again, we will have all of the dies and SKU numbers and everything in the comments, and if you miss any, just let us know and we'll be happy to tell you where they're at. But you've got a Santa Claus face in here, gingerbread, a Christmas tree, a stocking, and a snowman. So there's stuff in here whether you celebrate Christmas or you celebrate just the winter season, or you just celebrate like being festive. It's got a little bit of versatility, so that's why I chose that. I also wanted to give you something with an embossing effect. So if you aren't familiar, we came out this past year with something that's called switchlets. And essentially it's an embossing folder right here, and then it has die sets that come with it that are interchangeable. And I'm going to actually die cut a lot of this on camera, so you'll see how it works. But what's nice about this is you can just cut a ton of different scalloped ones or circles, or there's this nice like pinked edge. You can have a bunch of these just made one day and then build your cards from there. I did use this on a different card, so when I get to that card, I'll show you how I did it. But I just wanted to show you that I have it right here off to the side for that other card. You're going to also need some gold luster wax or any kind of luster wax that you might have. We have it in silver, rose gold, and gold, and that is going to be to give us a little bit of an antique feel and to bring out the embossing on the background. You're going to want to have some liquid adhesive handy and some foam tape, a water spritzer. This is for the embossing folder, and that is simply because we need to open up the fibers on the paper before we emboss on it. And then for the tree, I am using crushed olive distressed ink to add a little bit of some shadows on it. Use whatever ink you have, or if you want to keep it nice and crisp and clean, then you don't have to add ink at all. But that is basically the gist of what you're going to need. And now we're going to get into the actual making. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down how I would probably tackle it if I were you making these in mass production. So I would actually do the embossing first. I would do all my embossing one day, get all my black panels cut, and then emboss them all and let them sit to dry. And then the next day I would tackle all of my die cutting, and then the third day I would do assembly. I know some people probably could do it all in one day, but not all of us. Some of us have very busy schedules and that might not be possible. So if you break it down little by little, it makes the assembly a lot easier. So I'm just going to put the card, I'm going to put the card right here off to the side, and I'm going to bring in the panels. So I've already pre-cut my panel, and I have this in both imperial and metric sizes. So I'll give you a minute to cut yours down to size. But if you are working with inches, it's 5 1/4 tall by 3 3/4 of an inch wide. So that's 5 1/4 inch tall and 3 3/4 inch wide. If you're working with metric, it is 13 centimeters tall and 9 1/2 centimeters wide. Metric again is 13 centimeters tall and 9 1/2 centimeters wide. So I'll let you guys cut those. I'm going to get my my handy dandy Big Shot into, well, I probably should have told you, you're going to need your machine. That's the big one. Any of your Big Shot machines will work. So whether you've got the fold away, the plus, the regular Big Shot, or even a smaller, bigger one, this particular project will work on all of them. So what you're going to do, once you have your panel cut, you are going to get your machine set up on the platform for 3D textured impressions. So on everyone's platform, there's the instructions are kind of different on each platform, but you will see what you need to do for a sandwich for that particular technology. So you're looking for the 3D textured impressions. And what we're going to do is you're going to take a water spritzer, and you're going to lightly spritz both sides of your panel, and you want to make sure, you don't want it soaking wet, but you want to make sure that it's covered with water, and that is so that we can loosen the fibers in the material so that it will emboss easier. If you don't do this before you put it through the folder, what it will do sometimes, because we're asking for it to give a lot, is it will rip or tear. So you do want to lightly water it down so you get a really nice crisp emboss without the fibers and the paper tearing apart. So I'm just going to spritz this off camera real quick. So you can see I've got it nice and wet, probably a little too wet, but that's okay. We're going to let it sit aside to dry. So then if you're using something with a texture and you want the texture to show, you're going to want to face it down into the folder. If you have smooth cardstock, doesn't matter which way you put it, but I always, I face mine towards the emboss side. So you want to face the front of your cardstock into the emboss so that it pushes, through. Or wait, am I doing that right? Yes, I am. Okay. So I've got it on my emboss side so that it'll actually push up. That's what I meant to say, not push through. So you're going to put that down, and then you just need one cutting mat on top, or cutting pad. And then I always like to roll these through 2 to 3 times. That's how you know you get a really good impression. I wouldn't do less than 2. If you really want to get the details of that folder, you're definitely going to want to do 2. I like to do 3. So you can see right away how beautiful that kind of looks. So what I like to do is do these, and then I set them off to the side to dry. So I'm going to put this folder away real quick, and I'm going to grab what I need next. So I'm going to be die cutting next, and I want to use my thin die adapter because I'm going to be cutting with thinlits. So you're going to want to get your platform prepared for that. And I am going to be cutting my trees next. So this essentially is 1, 2, 3, 4 olive trees, olive green trees. And then I've got 1 brown tree that I've built them all on. So I'm going to cut a few more of the trees, but I've already pre-cut 2 of them. So you just want to get whatever color you've chosen for whatever item you've decided to work with from this die set. So I'm going to grab, okay, I've got my tree, and I'm going to cut 2 more of the trees, so I have 4 total. So I'm just going to get my cardstock, and I'm going to cut my trees down to size. So one way to not, because you don't need the base of the tree, I'm going to actually cut my cardstock so that I don't waste any of that. So I always lay it on first, and then I'll cut down to size. And then what you can do is once you've established what size square you need to cut with, then you can just go ahead and pre-cut this size, and you know every time you go to cut this, it's going to cut properly. So that's depending on how, if you do want the base, you can put the base and then trim them off and use them for something else. But I know that I just want to cut my cards and not waste my cardstock. So for the thinlits, you're going to have your thin die adapter on top of your platform. You're going to have 1 cutting pad, and then you're going to put your paper down and your die down on top of that, and then 1 more cutting pad. And it should cut in 1 pass. And now I've got trees. So you're going to cut 4 of these total in this, and whatever color you've decided to use. And I'm realizing as I looked at my die set that my star die is missing. So my final project might not have my star on it unless I can find it. It fell off my paper. Okay. So you're going to have 4 green trees, or if you're choosing to do like a really bright poppy tree, whatever color you've decided, you're going to cut 4 of those. And then I'm going to cut one full-size tree, including the tree base, out of brown because I want the tree trunk to be brown, but then it also gives me a base to put the folded trees on. So I'm just going to cut one of those. And I'm obviously doing each item individually, but you could be cutting the stars and the trees at the same time, so you can actually get two elements done at once. Okay, and then I want my tree base to be out of this color. So I don't want to waste my cardstock. So I'm going to just trim my paper down. And then you can again cut that paper, mass produce it that way. And then I'm just going to run it through to get my tree base. So then I've got my tree trunk base. And then I'm going to see real quick if I can find my star while you guys are still cutting. Because I just had it. This is what happens when things are live. Looks like I'm going to have no luck with finding my star, but from the same die set, there is a star die, and you're just going to want to cut that out of the gold opulent glitter cardstock. So my top of my tree will not have my star on it because I can't find that for whatever reason. It must have fallen out somewhere. But just cut one of those out of the glitter. And that's it for the cutting. So I'm just going to move this out of the way and start to pull in my other elements so you can see how we're going to build things up. Okay, so we're going to be inking next. So you're going to want to bring in a craft mat or a separate piece of paper, and we're going to ink the edges of our tree to give it just a little bit of dimension. Okay, and then I'm actually going to trim off the base right here that I had extras on. So I'm going to just take my Sizzix scissors and just trim off the bottom edge of those. And I'm sorry if I am moving too fast. I'll try to put little breaks in between steps so that everyone can kind of keep up if they are making along. So I am just going to grab a piece of spare paper that I have here off to the side to do my inking on top of. Also, it'll help you see the color better. So I went with crushed olive just because it was a really nice bright tone. And I'm essentially just going to take this and just add color to the edges. I'll see if I can zoom this in a little so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And I'm just in a circular motion going through, adding some color to the edge of my tree. If you have a craft mat's great to do this on top of because then you're not wasting the ink. It'll just keep moving on. You can also, if you're like me, I do it like this so I get a firmer transfer of color. But if you'd like a nice blended edge, then do it on top of a craft mat and just slowly work it in circles. So you're going to do this on all 4 of the green trees, or whatever color you decided. I do always recommend, whenever you're doing anything like this where you're adding a shadow, the color that you select for the ink, you want it to be darker in tone obviously compared to the tree, because I put this on heavy-handed because eventually some of the color starts to seep into the paper, and so it'll lose a little bit of its brightness, especially if you're doing it color on color. So you definitely, as it might look very dark, but in a little bit it won't look like that. So I'm going to just do all of my trees real quick. There is one tool I forgot to tell you to grab. It's not necessary. You can still do the project without it, but I think if you're going to be making a bunch of cards, that this might come in handy. And it's called the Fold and Form tool. And one end of it essentially has what's similar to like a bone folder. So it'll help you create really nice creased edges. And we are going to be folding these trees in half. So that's why I bring it up, because I think if you're having to do a bunch of these, then it's just going to look, it's going to make your life a little bit easier when you're trying to get really formed lines. We aren't going to be adding any ink to anywhere else on the project. There's an optional portion where you can add some black ink if you really want to make something rustic. I'm not going to be using the black ink today. But if you want to, you can grab a black ink before we add on the gilding wax to one of the panels. I wanted to show you what it could look like if we went a little bit more crisp. And then I've got a version, which I've shown you, where it's a little bit more rustic. So I wanted to do both so that you could see what your options are. Sounds like they're doing some building in our downstairs in the warehouse. Sorry if you can hear that. Our studio is right above parts of the warehouse. Oh, I realized I'm like doing almost all of this off camera. I'm so sorry. I forgot it zoomed in. This is what helps looking off to the side, seeing where the camera is, Alexis. Okay, so I went a little bit fast. I'll give you a few minutes while I'm cleaning up to keep inking your pieces. And then I'm going to zoom back out. There we go. So I've inked all 4 of those. And you can do less if you, like, you can get this same kind of effect with 3 trees. So if you wanted to get through this very quickly, you don't have to do 4. I did 4 because I wanted a super dimensional tree, but you can easily do this with 3 trees as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move these 2 bottom pieces towards each other until they line up perfectly like that. And then I'm just going to gently fold up to the top of the tree. Now this is where the Fold and Form tool comes in handy. You don't need it because you can easily do this with your fingers, but I just find it so much easier to be able to crease that line down the edge. So that's why I'm doing that. But you're going to want to fold it so that you're getting your texture to the inside. So the smooth side should be the outside of your fold. So I'm going to fold these in towards each other again. Oops. I find it easier to do the 2 bottom pieces, to fold those towards each other so you get a really nice crisp line. And you just want to gently do it so that then when you go to do the firm line, you only have 1 instead of multiple lines of crease. And you'll see I go slow on this because it just makes my life easier. And then I don't have to redo anything. And then I'm going to do it on the last one as well. Okay, so this one I noticed just as I was about to do that firm crease that it's not quite all the way over, so I just want to move that before I do the firm crease. So then I've got my 4 folded trees and my 1 base tree. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut off the base on, or the whatever tree trunk portion I have there, and I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive, and I'm going to adhere the glitter one to the brown one. If you've got older kids who can help you with this part, this is perfect for them to do. You can't really mess that part up. So just let that sit and adhere. Now what I want to do is line these up to create a dimensional tree almost. And I'm just going to line side to side and adhere. So you're going to take one side of your tree and you're just going to add adhesive. And you don't want to do it too much to the edge because then otherwise the adhesive comes out the edge. And then you're just going to line this up as best you can and just adhere that one side. Now you will have some areas that are not perfectly symmetrical trees. So what I started to do is I would just go back in and trim the edges off so that then they did look symmetrical. There's only one portion on the tree in the middle where it isn't perfectly symmetrical. So then once you've glued that tree onto this one, then you'll go to the back side of this tree, add a little bit of adhesive here, and then glue on the next half of another tree. We're going to do the same thing. Line up that bottom one and the top one as best you can. See, I put a little too much, so it came out the edge there, so I'm just going to wipe that away. You don't need a lot of glue to get these to stick together. And then again, I'm just going, where there's a little bit of overlap, I'm just going to trim that away. And I'll have a nice clean edge. Okay. And then the last one, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue right here. And I'm going to put my last tree, line those two edges up. So then you should have two, when you're done, you should have two clean edges that have absolutely no glue on them. And those will be the edges that you adhere down to the brown tree. Okay, so it should look something like this, where it's flat on one side and then dimensional on the other. But what I'm going to do is really, I want those trees to stick really well together, so I'm going to push them in on each other so that they are nice and firm. Okay, so now I've got my nice, beautiful dimensional tree. Now I'm not going to adhere it just yet because of the next portion, and I want to do the next portion before I adhere that down. So just let that sit off to the side and dry. You are going to want to bring back in a scrap piece of paper, a Post-it note, whatever you might have handy nearby. I am trying to find the lid to my glue so it doesn't dry out. The next thing we're going to do is the luster wax. So at this point, your panels should be dry, and if not, very close to dry. And if they're not, obviously if you're doing this in stages, it won't matter. But if it's still a little bit wet, we'll start with the tree first. So what you're going to do is on the edges of the tree, you'll see I basically just went in with my finger and added a little bit of gold to the edges of the trees, just to give it a little bit of extra sheen and sparkle. But what's nice about the luster wax, it's very creamy, so you don't need a lot to have it go on. And I do recommend putting it on your finger and then dabbing the excess off on the side. And then you're just gonna kind of lightly go in with your fingertip and just move it in towards the center. This is beeswax based, so it has a nice, really smooth application. It also smells amazing because of the infused orange oil, which definitely helps with the application. But you're just going to go in and you're just going to add small, let me zoom in again. You're going to add in small little portions of this wax. And you'll see I keep, every time I go get new wax, I always tap off the excess on a spare piece of paper, a Post-it note, whatever you have handy. So I'm just going to work my way through the whole tree doing this. And this is the portion, if you want to keep it really nice and clean, you do not have to do this step at all by any means. Okay, so depending on what color you're doing, gold may not look the best with the colors that you choose. We also have silver, we also have rose gold. It's definitely a really fun way to amplify whatever project you're actually making with very minimal effort. As you can see, I'm almost done with this first tree. And I'm going slow just so that everyone can kind of catch up and make sure that we're not rushing through this too quickly. And you can even pick, like maybe you just do portions of the tree. You don't even have to do like all the entire edges. You can make it look like glistening snowflakes almost. But I like making sure that the edges are done because those are what's going to show when it's sitting on the actual card itself. So now I've got a really beautiful kind of effect on my tree all the way around. So then once you're done with the tree, we're going to do the same thing to our embossed panel. And this is a very buildable medium. So what I like to do when I'm doing embossing folders is do a very light layer and then go back in and build up color where I want it. So I will always first go through and pick the highest embossed points and get all of those inked up first, and then I'll go into the lower ones. And I find that I just get a way better application when I do that because I don't like having too much on the very bottom layer. So I try when I get to those lower portion areas to have a little bit less luster wax on my fingers. So I'll start with the portions that are a little bit taller, and then by the time I get to the lower ones, I don't have as much to transfer over, and they just pick up a little bit, which is exactly what you want. Because if you get too much on the very bottom portion, then it looks very antiqued. And if you want to keep more of a modern flair to it, then you don't want too much of it on the very base, like flat area. And what I'll do is I'll first go through and basically do this over the entire folder, and then I'll go back into certain areas and add even more. So I just do a once over real quick. You can see I'm going back when there's lower pieces after I've gone to the higher pieces, so that, and it's not transferring as much of the wax because most of the wax fell on these higher embosses. So then I just get a really beautiful effect on those lower trees. So this is just with one pass over all of them. Now, if I want, because I know that this middle portion is going to be kind of covered up, I'm going to probably go back around just the outside edges and just really make sure that those are nice and popping, that you can really see the dimension with the wax, because that's the portion that's going to show on the card. So I'm really just going back on those outer edge trees and doing a second pass and making sure they're all really nice and festive. I think this is one of my favorite ways to add something to embossing folders and make them pop. So one trick I do want to remind you, if you're doing a ton of these cards, you probably don't want your fingers to get super messy. I would suggest wearing gloves if you're going to do a lot of these instead of having this wax sitting on your fingers. The easiest way to have it removed from your fingers as well, if you are going to use your fingertip, is antibacterial. So the hand sanitizer takes it right off. So I'd have a little bit of that maybe sitting by with a paper towel. Comes right off if you do that. That's a little tip of the trade. But if you are going to be making quite a few of these, I really would recommend you not doing it with your fingers and instead doing it with some gloves on your fingers, simply for the mess alone. But more so just because it's so messy if you're doing a ton of them. And I did this last year and it learned my lesson the hard way. So I would definitely recommend using gloves or an applicator if you're going to do a bunch of cards at one time. Okay, so now I've got that done. You're gonna then, you have a white panel that I've already pre-cut mine. So if you're cutting yours right now in inches, it's 2 3/4 inch wide by 4.5 inches tall. That's 2 3/4 inch wide by 4.5 inches tall. If you're using metric, it's 7 centimeters wide by 11.5 centimeters tall. Metric again is 7 centimeters wide by 11.5 centimeters tall. And so this is the one where I wanted to show you how it's a little bit different on the card I pre-made. So I went in with a very, very light layer of like a gray ink and put it around the edges of the panel. And then I went back through and added a little bit of gilding wax. So I wanted to show you a version that was a little bit more crisp and clean. So on this version, I'm only going to be adding a little bit of the gilding wax. So I'm going to bring back in my scrap piece of paper and my wax and just add a very, very minimal kind of effect to the edge. And you can bring it in a little bit, especially if you want it to be around the tree. You can do it, you can put the tree on first and then do this. If you want to outline the tree a little bit in certain areas, I'm just going to do it prior. I just love the effect that this gives. It's so beautiful. Okay, so now I've got all of my effects done. So now I'm just gonna clean my hands off again real quick. I don't know why I cleaned them prior to doing that step because I was gonna get them dirty again anyway. So now we're just gonna kind of glue everything together. And as you can see, like I obviously have been taking my time, but if you have already got everything cut and you just break it down little by little, it's going to make your life so much easier. So I want this to have a little bit of pop, so I'm going to take some foam tape and add it to the back of the white panel just so that I can have a little bit of dimension on my card. So I've got our foam tape here, and I'm just going to put 2 little rows on the back of that. And I'm going to center that on the embossed panel. I don't have a good angle to get that to come up. I also have no nails right now. There we go. Okay, whoops. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to find my center line. I just noticed there's a little bit of gilding wax I don't want to stick on there, so I'm just going to wipe that away. Okay, so just center and adhere that down. Isn't that beautiful how it already pops just by doing that, by creating that border? I love that. I realize it's a little bit crooked, so I'm just going to fix that because I'm OCD about that kind of stuff. So let's see. And now I'm going to adhere my tree down to the brown tree. So I'm just going to add my glue onto the back, and then I'm going to lay this right on top and adhere that into place. Now, if you, unlike me, had your star, then you're going to put a little bit of foam tape on the back of your die cut star for the tree. So then once you've got that all situated, then you're going to adhere your tree. And this is more so why I liked doing the bottom tree, is then you can just adhere this in one piece rather than trying to adhere down like a dimensional piece. Just would have made it so much more difficult. So that's why I did the base tree more than anything. So then you're just going to center this on here. Because this one doesn't have the star, I'm just going to move mine up a little bit. With the star, you're going to probably have yours aligned more with the bottom. So if with your star, you'll put a little foam tape behind it and you'll put it here at the top. You could also, if you wanted to make this a little bit more advanced, you could go back through and add little ornaments on, add sequins to make it look like ornaments. The choice is entirely yours. And then the last step is to adhere it to your card front. So one tip I like to point out with 3D embossing, I feel like the best way to adhere it down without the fuss is a dimensional tape. Because it's got dimension to it, you just don't want to have to deal with that. And waiting for liquid adhesive to dry. So a red tape or like a double-sided tape or foam tape is the way I would go instead of a liquid adhesive, just because I feel like they're easier to handle at that point. Okay, so then I'm just going to remove these. And I'm just going to center that on my card front. And there you go. So as you can see, you get kind of the same effect with or without the star at the top. And it's just a really fun festive card to give out for the holidays. I do want to show you an alternate option in case you don't want to do trees. And so this is where the switchlets come in. So I'm going to pull those in real quick so I can show you how it even works while you're still working on the rest of your tree. So for a switchlet, it is an embossing folder, like a 3D embossing folder like the one I just showed you with the tree pattern. But what's different about it is it's also cuts at the same time. So it embosses and cuts at the same time. So you're going to go back down to your 3D textured impressions because it is a 3D folder. That is the platform you're going to be working on. And I'm just going to grab a piece of paper to show you how it cuts. So I'm just going to cut a piece of paper big enough to go through the folder. And what it comes with is 3 die sets, or 3 dies, not die sets. And you get, in this case, a scalloped edge, a pinked edge, and just a plain old circle. So I'm going to do the scalloped one because I love that one. And you've got magnets embedded in the folder. And basically what it does is it allows you to snap those dies into place around the embossing feature so that when it cuts and embosses at the same time, it'll cut out the scalloped edge, but it will emboss the center. So because it is a 3D embossing folder, Again, you're going to want to get your paper wet on both sides. So I'm just going to spritz that off to the edge, and then I am going to lay that in and close the folder on it. Because it's a 3D folder, you only need one cutting pad on top. With these, I would only run them through twice. You don't really need, because it's not a huge all over pattern, I don't think you need to run it through more than that. But if you want, you can run it through 3 times. There's no problem with that. So then when you're done, you get this really cool looking cut shape, but then it's also embossed at the same time, which is just fantastic. So that is how a 3D switchlet works. So that's the pinked, that's the scalloped one. But then if I wanted to do something with a pinked edge, I would just put that in place on top of the magnets and run it through. And essentially what it allows you to do is just cut out a bunch of different shapes. This one's the seals, so that you can, yeah, it's called seal, which is 665379. And so you can have a plain circle edge, a scalloped edge, or a pinked edge, and then you just, all of them have the same embossed pattern on the inside. I love it. I think they're great. So this next little project I'm going to just assemble together real quick shows you how to use that one in a project. So let me move these off to the edge. So I'm using the Arctic Sky envelopes for the base on this. And I'm using the Shells 3D folder, which looks something like this, which was part of our Chapter 3 release. What's beautiful about our 3D embossing folders is there is a lot of versatility to what you can do with them. So I showed you how to do luster wax, but you can also ink them. So this is that same Christmas tree pattern we just did, but I just used a variety of inks. And then, or you can paint panels using our metallic effects, the Sizzix Effectz, the creamy acrylic paints. So this is the gold, and then you let it dry, and then you run it through the embossing folder, and it gives like this amazing gold background. You can do that with any of them really. But this is the shells, and what I wanted to show you with this one is what the silver looks like when you add a little bit of silver to the tops of the folders. So this one is a really kind of nice Art Deco feel, which I think is great year-round, but especially at the holidays. It adds a really nice texture to the background, and you can see I'm not dabbing out the excess. That's only because I am only very lightly dabbing my finger in here. But if you are learning, like when I first was, I constantly was oversaturating the luster wax. So now I've learned just how much pressure I need to get exactly what I want on there. So instantaneously changes the look of the folder and makes it look so cool. I love luster wax and embossing folders. They are probably one of my favorite things to do. So with this particular one, I wanted to show you a different die set I have pulled in. Now I just have to find it. This is what happens. I pulled them all off to the side so I could show you, but then I don't remember where I set them down. Well, that makes no sense. I literally pulled all of the packaging so I could show you all what dies I'm using, and now the packaging has disappeared. There it is. Okay, it's underneath my cardstock that I showed you earlier. So there is a really cool die set from Eileen Hull that was released called Wreath and Snowflake, and comes with this snowflake right here and this wreath element and the border, and it does work with another die set that she has, but I really loved the snowflake in that particular set. And so what I did is I wanted to show you what it looks like. I cut it out of the Ivory Opulent cardstock. I cut it out of white from the Festive range cardstock, and then I cut it out of white and added silver glitter onto the edges. And so what I wanted to do was to build a card with some simple elements. So in this case, I'm going to be building out a card using that seal, using the star from the snowflake and reset, and then the stockings from the die set we just made the last card with. So what I did is I did the inking on the edge of the peacock feathers on the seal just to bring out that emboss. And I'm going to grab my foam tape and I'm going to adhere my panel into the center. So you don't have to do like an entire panel. You could just do like a small little portioned area and cut it down in size so you could get like 2 for 1 and just emboss the whole panel and then trim it in half and just use a small portion on the card fronts. That's another way to cut down your time. So everything I'm showing you from here on out, these are just some extra ideas, different ways that maybe you can use the same die sets, or there's different die sets that really look nice. So I'm just going to center that. Then I'm going to kind of lay my pieces in where I want them to be. Now, I might do like a printed or a stamped sentiment here or put like the number 25. But basically, I just want to build my elements out and have like different little pieces showing. So I'm just going to glue things in place where I like it. That's how I operate most of the time. Just like, I like that. That looks good. That's the beauty of crafting. You get to do what you want. So I'm just going to lay these down real quick, show you how fast and easy it can be when you're assembling. You can just pick portions of it, tackle one little piece at a time, go through, adhere all of your embossing panels first, and then adhere the stocking next. Like, you can do assembly line with your card making, which is great. So I'm going to do that right there. Just going to add a little bit of glue to the back of this. That's a lot of glue. Pushed a little too hard on that. And I'm just going to have it kind of come off the edge right here. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape to the last of this one. And then I would put like a little sentiment right here, or like I said, like emboss a phrase on here, but just another sweet, fun holiday card that you can send. Now, if you're not into making cards, that's okay. Maybe you don't have time. You can do tags instead. So this is a nice one where we combined the tag collection from Tim Holtz, which comes with all these different tag shapes. And you can cut out your tags to attach to gifts. You can emboss the tags. I use the Christmas tree pattern on the back of this, and then the seals, and you can add one of the basic Christmas shapes to it. Or you can do really small ones like this one where I used the holly embossing folder, which looks like this. And then you can, again, use one of the smaller dies from the basic Christmas shapes. So those are just some tag ideas. I did want to show you some alternate project cards that are still pretty easy, but let's say you want to elevate it just a little bit. So I've got 2 right here where I have used this die set to create a stencil, and then I have taken crystal paste or dimensional paste or expand paste, and I have run it across the stencil portion of the card, and then you just sit those aside to dry, and then you have a really beautiful, simple card that you can send through. These ones are really nice. I did them on top of the same card bases as the other ones. Let's say you're more into foliage kind of stuff, then we've got something with like the floral abundance where you can just pick out some florals, die cut a bunch of them, and then make simple, really cute card fronts. You can also, this one's a little bit more advanced, but I've got the shells background here. And then I've got the seasonal flowers and floral abundance combined. And you can really create like a very in-depth card. This one I used a lot of paper sculpting on. Or you can do an embossed background. This is actually the fir tree card. And then I pulled in some of the opulent festive to have that nice gold, or not gold, but green glitter. I used the holly embossing folder, but I only inked around the edges and left the white in the center alone so that I would create like a kind of zoomed in effect. And then I've just taken some different kind of foliage and florals from other die sets that we had released in chapter 3, and you can add a little sentiment on here. Those ones are obviously a little bit more advanced, but all the same, really easy to work with. So that's kind of it for the projects. I'm going to switch my camera back up real quick. Okay, so that's it for me. I know that might have felt a little fast, but I know it was a longer, probably virtual workshop than most of you were probably anticipating. But I wanted to make sure you had lots of other ideas and inspiration. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you have any questions for me specifically that weren't answered while we were going through the workshop, please just put them in the comment section. I will, after this is done, I will go back through and make sure everyone's questions are answered. But have fun with your holiday card making. Don't be intimidated by it. Just break it down little by little. Tackle one thing a day or over a couple days. But if you get going on it now, you'll be able to get your cards out in the mail well in time for them to arrive for the holidays. Or if you just want to decorate tags for your Christmas gifts or your Hanukkah gifts or whatever you might be celebrating. But definitely just have fun with it and enjoy your holiday season. I'm really grateful for all of you, and I'm really grateful that you decided to join me today, and I look forward to seeing what you all have had to say and your feedback. If you liked this, please let me know if there's something you'd like to see in the future, us doing little virtual workshops like this with you all. We love being able to teach and make alongside you. So be sure, if you do make cards from this, please use the hashtag #MyMakingStory, because I would love to see what you come up with. And we can probably share them on our socials and have other people be inspired as well. I hope you are all doing well. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you soon.